You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Engage.
78 years have passed since the days of the original USS Enterprise. Now a new Galaxy starship has been designed.
Hailing frequencies open. Welcome to Galaxy Class, a Star Trek The Next Generation podcast on BQN. I'm Ambassador Steven.
And I'm holo photographer Stefan.
Stefan!
Steven!
Long time no hear.
It's been a minute or two.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am a little bit tired, but I'm happy to be here. You?
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited that we're on episode 3. How about that?
Mm-hmm. How about that? I'm glad that we're continuing this on. It's fun, and we've got some good ideas, and I'm excited for the things coming.
Me too. I think it's exciting, listeners. We see you downloading. We see you listening. We hope that you're enjoying this even half as much as we are, because we're enjoying it quite a bit. So please continue, listen, give us feedback on our different social media presences. We're happy to hear it. We're happy to incorporate it. Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So today we are diving into our first personnel profile. So listeners, in our first episode, we talked about different things we'll be doing in the podcast. And this is our first stab, pun intended, at a personnel profile. Do you have any comments on that, Stefan?
There go our star ratings on Apple Podcasts, down to 1. Just kidding. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't leave a review.
So we decided to do profiles based on the main characters of TNG. And we're starting with Worf, son of Moog, our favorite Klingon from TNG. Well, I'm making an assumption there, but Worf. We're starting with Worf. So folks, we'll do this kind of throughout each season. We'll take 1 or 2 characters a season and do this structured dive into who these characters are. So you can expect to hear some biographical information, kind of where they served, their ranks, where we've seen them throughout the franchise, and some fun facts about them. It's interesting to find what is out there, and we're doing our best to stay in canon. So folks, I know there's an appreciation for that. So we're doing our best to stay in canon. We cite our sources, so bear with us as we delve into this new segment.
Let's rock and roll.
Okay. So let's start with some biographical information. Stefan, who the hell is Worf?
Who the hell is Worf besides not being a merry man? Well, Worf was born in 2340 on Kronos. When he was 6 years old, his parents were killed, along with nearly 4,000 other Klingon colonists, by the Romulans in an attack on Khitomer. USS Intrepid Chief Petty Officer Sergei Rozhenko found Worf in the rubble of that attack. He and his wife Helena raised Worf along with their own son Nikolai. Worf clashed with his human peers and accidentally snapped one's neck during a soccer game when he was a teenager. That boy died the next day, greatly impacting the way he would, and that being Worf, greatly impacting the way Worf would interact with humans for the rest of his life. When Worf turned 15, he decided to perform the rite of ascension and become a warrior. His peers on Kronos rejected him as he was not seen as pure Klingon, having been raised partially by humans. While fasting in the caves of Nomad, Worf had a vision where Kahless prophesied that he'd do something no other Klingon had done. Worf returned to Earth and decided the vision meant that he was to join Starfleet. Eventually, he was assigned to the Enterprise D in 2364. After Tasha Yar's death, he took over as security officer. The Enterprise D crashed on Viridian 3, leaving Worf free for reassignment. This landed him on Deep Space Nine, where he assisted with the Klingon attack on the station during the invasion of Cardassian 2373. He would never be far from his Enterprise D crewmates, turning up and eventually serving on the Enterprise E. We don't know exactly what happens to the Enterprise E, but Worf does claim to not be responsible for it. Several years later, Worf was working as a subcontractor for Starfleet Intelligence under Commander Rolaren.
So that's sort of a nutshell. Who is Worf? So we have Worf, son of Moog, House of Martok, Slayer of Gowron, played by Michael Dorn. Of course, our lovable Michael Dorn, affectionately referred to as Dorny by Marina Sirtis. I appreciate that at conventions. It's kind of a fun. I enjoy their banter. His adoptive parents, as mentioned, were Helena and Sergei Rozhenko, but his biological parents were Moog, and we can only find a reference to the wife of Moog. There's no canonical reference to his mother's name. His siblings include Kern, fellow son of Moog, Nikolai Rozhenko, his adopted brother, and Jeremy Astor via Rustai, the Klingon ritual of bonding, in the episode The Bonding from Next Generation. His partners include Kalar, who was the part Klingon, part human, who he mated with, and Jadzia Dax, who he later married in Deep Space Nine. And he and Kalar had Alexander Rozhenko, who Worf took in after the untimely death of Kalar, and his parents took Alexander in. There was a back and forth. We don't really talk about Worf's fatherhood very much. It's not something we love to chat about, right?
It's not great.
Right? It's not like he's amazing in so many ways. He's just not the best dad. Not winning any awards here. He graduated from Starfleet Academy in 2361, and following his graduation, he held the rank of lieutenant junior grade and served as flight control officer, the Con, aboard the USS Enterprise D. There is a 3-year period between his graduation and the start of TNG that is still unaccounted for. And then Worf was promoted to acting chief of security and made a full lieutenant following the death of Lieutenant Tasha Yar. As we see in Generations, he's promoted to lieutenant commander in 2371.
He accepted an assignment to serve as Strategic Operations Officer at Station Deep Space Nine in approximately 2372, following the destruction of the Enterprise D.
In the Star Trek Picard novel, The Last Best Hope, Worf is revealed to have replaced Picard as the captain of the Enterprise E, following Picard's becoming an admiral to aid in the Romulan evacuation in advance of the Romulan star-going supernova. Though there is a token objection due to his reprimand for his actions in prioritizing the life of Jadzia Dax over his mission on Sukara, he is accepted for the role, in part because Starfleet believes it will foster good relations with the Klingon Empire. Worf's captaincy would later be confirmed as canon in the episode Surrender.
And when we last see Worf, he is working in Starfleet Intelligence as Raffi Musiker's handler in Star Trek Picard, reuniting with his Enterprise D/E crew. Worf serves as an independent contractor reporting to Commander Rolaren in his work with Starfleet Intelligence.
So, where do we see Worf? Kind of everywhere, right?
He's definitely the character we get the most development from.
Absolutely. He has been in The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Picard as far as series go.
And in the movies, we get him in Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis.
His first appearance, as we probably all expect, is in Encounter at Farpoint, the first episode of TNG, which aired on September 26th, 1987. Stefan, what were your first thoughts? Thinking back to Encounter at Farpoint, Worf.
My entry point to TNG was not early in the show. So Worf was just, for me, always kind of there. And if I think about his presence in Encounter at Farpoint, I felt like it was kind of weird once I got back to watching those early seasons, because he was not the security officer. He was, I wouldn't say a background character, but he certainly wasn't as present as he is in the later seasons. So my thought is he wasn't fully formed back in the early days, which would absolutely change as the years go on, right?
Absolutely. I actually remember first seeing Worf I don't recall a lot from the first viewings of these things when I was like a little kid, but I recall Worf. I recall seeing Worf and thinking, he's shaped so weird.
Yeah.
Like initial Worf, right? Right. As the con officer, he had the really short haircut, but the huge forehead, and he was muscular, but like broad-shouldered, but kind of slender from the waist down. And I just recall, I do remember thinking, that man is shaped weird.
Yeah, it is sort of a weird fit for like a big Klingon officer, and he's got this sort of like tight little jumpsuit. It's kind of a bizarre image.
Well, and if you recall the first couple of seasons, or I guess the first season. So when he's on the con, the con and navigation were those weird chairs that you sat down into and kind of leaned back, and he was a tall man, and it just looked uncomfortable. It did not look like a natural fit for him. And it just, I remember feeling like Worf was kind of an odd duck, so to speak. And, obviously that changed and grew over time, thankfully. But I do recall Encounter at Farpoint thinking, who is this guy?
Did you say you didn't remember watching this episode for the first time, or
I do remember. That's what I'm saying.
You do remember this episode?
This recollection is actually from the first time I saw this. Like as a child, thinking, because the only Klingons I had seen to that point were in the TOS movies. I don't think I'd watched the original series television show at that point. But I'd seen, Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon, and so seeing Worf in this, it just seemed odd. It just seemed odd.
And you watched this with your dad?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys talk about it?
No, I was 5.
Okay.
Good show, right? Like it was there wasn't. We were not having a discourse on the merits of the episode.
Okay.
So his last appearance, or most recent appearance, well, I guess last to date, would be in Star Trek Picard: The Last Generation, which aired on April 20th, 2023. So from 1987 to 2023 for us. What did you think of Worf then? How had your thoughts about him changed or grown, or just is there a snapshot of who he was now to you?
So when he was introduced in season 3 of Picard, I thought they introduced him in the way that I would have liked Worf to come on board, as in he came in swinging. Right, he comes in to save Raffi from that gangster, and we know that prior to that, Raffi's talking to her handler. We don't know it's Worf, but I don't know about you, Steven, but when she was talking to the screen with the text on it,
mm-hmm.
I was like, this is Worf's cadence. This is Worf's sort of short, direct style of speech. So I was like, that's got to be him. And when he comes in, batleth's blazing. I know it's not a batleth. He has a new weapon for Picard, right? I don't recall what the name is, but I think it's great the way that they reintroduce him. And like the rest of our TNG family, it was so good to see him come back in looking like a badass.
I have to agree. I'm impressed that from the text on the screen you inferred that was Worf. I did not. I had no idea who that was.
I think it was partially me just so anticipatory about our people coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for any clue anywhere early on in the show for little nuggets of these people returning and this mysterious voice on screen. I was like, that's our dude. That's him.
That's fantastic. That's fun. I would agree that I really appreciated how they portrayed Worf in Picard. I just adore the character development they gave him, because Worf, right, when we first see Worf on TNG, he's a pretty one-dimensional character. It's not until a couple seasons in that he really starts to have some sort of development, and even then it's challenging. His initial introduction to Deep Space Nine, I found the same. It wasn't a very deep character for me at first. I think it got there more so, but in Picard, it's this rich, flavorful brew of Klingon honor and Zen mentorship growth. I don't know. I want I want to go to his Tai Chi class and then have
Same.
prune juice with him after.
I want to go to his Tai Chi class, and then afterward, I want to get in bar fights with Raffi alongside us.
That could be fun too. But yeah, I think that what they did with Worf as a character was wonderful, and I'm very happy with how, at least on screen, he's been left for us. Because oh gosh, the scene when they're back in the Enterprise D bridge in Picard, and they all sit down, and all of a sudden we hear Worf snoring.
All of a sudden, it's your mostly drunk uncle at Thanksgiving that's just tired, and you hear the snores coming from the corner. Yeah,
Stefan, that filled me with so much joy. They really explored the depth of his character, the gamut of his emotive abilities. I just love what they did with Worf in Picard. I think it was a master class in character presentation from Michael Dorn. I just really loved it.
yeah. I love how they sort of refined how Worf goes about being a fighter or a warrior, because he was, throughout TNG and Next Generation, I'm oversimplifying here, but a brute force kind of a warrior.
Yeah.
Right. And by the time we get to see him again in Picard, he's sort of a more focused ninja almost type warrior, and more thoughtful and meditative. And so there's definitely an arc across these decades we've enjoyed the character that is very enjoyable.
Absolutely. So, Stefan, thinking through all the myriad appearances of Worf throughout the franchise, what would you say is your favorite appearance of Worf? Or if there's one or two things, like what did you really appreciate or enjoy seeing Worf in?
I really love the episode, I believe it's called Parallels, where Worf is returning from a Batleth tournament, and something happens where he ends up going through these different timelines, and in one of these timelines he was victorious in this tournament. In another timeline he's like second place or something. I did not go back and watch this episode, so I don't remember all the details, but when I was preparing for this episode, or at least thinking about it, that's the first episode that came to mind. I like that they focused on the character, which we don't really have any shortage of episodes that focus on Worf, especially if we consider Deep Space Nine. But the episode Parallels, I've always appreciated.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a fun Worf episode.
How about you, Steven? Do you have a favorite appearance or a couple of favorite appearances of our favorite Klingon?
Definitely. First Contact. There's so many wonderful Worf
Say no
moments, more. Right? Tough little ship. Little, right? Bringing him in as captaining the Defiant, his, ramming speed, and today's a good day to die. I mean, there's so many wonderful Worf isms, and I especially appreciate toward the end when he pushes against Picard, and Picard calls him a coward, and he says, if you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand. So even in that moment of such intense anger and hatred, his honor wins out. And that just, to me, speaks so much to the character of Worf. Not the character in terms of he's a character, but in terms of his character, who he is as a man, as a Klingon. I really respect that. And I think there's so many wonderful moments, even when Picard apologizes and says, I regret some of the things I said. He just, Worf.
Yeah.
I feel like First Contact is the first on-screen iteration of Worf where we see a glimpse of what he's going to be. Now that we've gotten Picard, now that we've seen sort of his growth, I feel like that's the first glimpse into that. It's, maybe a transition from the rough and tumble, make a decision and go, to I don't know. I might be ascribing too much to it, but I really just First Contact stands out for me. And then a close second would be any of his appearances in Star Trek Picard, because what a fun character.
Yeah. The appearance that you talk about at the beginning of First Contact, there's a screenshot. I'm sure if you Google this it'll come up, of just Worf sitting on the bridge of the busted up Defiant, looking like an absolute beast, ready to do what they can with the Defiant to take out the Borg. Like the bridge is falling apart around him, and he just looks like an absolute force. And that it's such a great way to introduce Worf into that movie. It's such a great scene. I love that you brought that one up.
It's so much fun. So much fun.
And I want to go back to something that you said, Steven, about First Contact near the end when he's talking with Picard and he tells Picard he would kill him if he were any other man. This is a really interesting kind of bookend to what happened earlier in his life. And I had forgotten about this reference to him being a teenager and accidentally killing somebody in a soccer game. So he accidentally snapped somebody's neck. That person died the next day. And this sort of informed how Worf handles the weaklings that are human beings, or at least he steps more carefully around humans, recognizing that he's built more strong and more durable. So I feel like thinking about that partial origin of the character, having accidentally killed somebody, and how Worf does quite often feel a little bit like he's trying to restrain himself, or he feels a little bit boxed in, at least for me. And I don't know if that's like an acting choice as the character who went through this trauma of accidentally killing somebody in his adolescence and then just sort of trying to be this serious character that doesn't really let go and have a lot of fun. To go from that early incident to the scene that you're talking about, Steven, where he freely expresses that he would kill Picard, but he's not going to because he's Captain Picard and they have a history. It's an interesting spectrum or I guess it's an interesting progression of that early traumatic incident of his life through TNG, and then having this confrontation with Picard, and then beyond that. I agree with you. Maybe that is kind of our first sprinklings of how Worf evolves into the even more kind of centered, cautious, wise, should we say wise, character that he is by the time we get to revisit him in Picard.
I appreciate that. I want to say I didn't recall, but I'm not sure that I knew about the incident when he was a teenager in killing someone. I don't recall that bit of information.
I don't remember what episode it's in, but it is an on-screen discussion. And it kind of doing this research for this episode, it really kind of made me appreciate how Worf is played, because if you go through an event like that when you are very young, it definitely affects the way that you interact with people as you go on. And some people kind of do close themselves in and become a little bit more, I don't know, blunt and direct, and not kind of speak as much. We kind of know Worf as this character that he can be very blunt, and he doesn't just fill the space with just yammering like some other characters may do. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah. I think about his fatherhood and how challenged he is with Alexander, how difficult it is for him to be present, to be a parent. And I think this ties maybe a little bit in with what you're just saying about he has closed himself off because of his experiences, or simply because he's a Klingon in Starfleet, right? That's a unique experience at this point. And then he finds out randomly he has this child and has to figure that out. And he didn't really have a Klingon father. He's focusing on being a Klingon himself, but then how does he translate that to being the father of a Klingon son, especially one who doesn't have any interest in living a Klingon life himself? Alexander is not sort of interested in that. I think as we talk about Worf not being the best parent, it kind of makes sense.
It does. And certainly there's, you can talk about whether somebody tried their best to be a good parent, but this sort of makes me think about, as we are full grown adults, if we think about our own parents, they really probably didn't know what they were doing any more than I would know what I was doing if I had a kid to raise. I certainly am not struggling with the sort of identity issues that Worf had in his adolescence, being picked on for being a Klingon, but I have my own identity issues that I think we all can struggle with. And Worf probably had reasons for the issues that he had with his son and the difficulties he found in fatherhood. And it's made for some interesting episodes in TNG, and we also see Alexander again in Deep Space Nine. It's
Right.
Yeah, it's a complicated, tough situation for those two characters.
It is. Thinking about Worf in terms of his Klingon heritage, his Earth upbringing with such warm, lovely people, and then his
Mm-hmm.
desire to be more Klingon, maybe in part because of wanting to know more about his identity, but also maybe in a bit of retaliation to the very kind and gentle Rozhenkos who
Mm-hmm.
were raising him. I don't know that it's something he had ever come to terms with, and then suddenly he's a father.
Yeah.
And so he's not done his own work on what it means to be a child, to be a parent, to be part of a family, to be part of a human family, to be part of a Klingon family, right? There's all these components to family that
Yeah.
he is constantly struggling with, and we see this, and then suddenly he's a dad.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up his parents that raised him. I watched New Ground recently, the episode New Ground, and this is the one where his adoptive mother comes to the Enterprise with Alexander because he's living with them at this point. And they come on board, and his mom tells Worf that she thinks Worf and Alexander would love to get a chance to see each other. So she's coming to visit the Enterprise, and she's very excited. We find out later that Alexander will end up living with Worf, but she's very excited to get this father and son back together for a visit. Worf's response to her in that moment is very well. It's kind of an awful response. Alexander wasn't there, but I know that if I was going to visit my estranged father and it'd been a long time and his response was very well, I probably wouldn't be super interested in going to visit him.
Sure.
And then Alexander shows up, and it is kind of awkward and difficult because Alexander kind of spits out that he is going to not go back. And the scene is in the transporter room. He says he's not going back and he's staying on the Enterprise or something like that. And Worf side eyes his mom so hard. So it's rough. It's rough being son of Worf.
And even looking into when they try to incorporate Alexander into the life of the ship, right? Going to school, going to class.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, Worf's response is essentially do better, kid. Right? It's not what happened or what were you experiencing. It's you don't do that, do this. He's used to being an officer. He's used to having people under his command. He's not used to, or from what we are aware of, he doesn't have the experience in nurturing someone in being, I mean, he has friends, right? But even his friends are distant, and he doesn't have that sort of connection to another person in a way we think of a parent child or even a sibling, right? When I say his, I'm thinking Alexander's mother didn't raise him to be Klingon. Kalar said, hey, I'm going to raise him to be who he is and let him kind of figure that out. And suddenly Alexander's with Worf, who says, I think of Lower Decks, I am Klingon, I love honor Klingon. Like
Yeah.
I love honor. But it's kind of true, right?
It is.
So yeah, so poor Alexander is just left. Worf doesn't know what to do. I know they bring Troy in, they bring Counselor Troy in to kind of help, but she even notices right off, right? I don't recall the name of the episode, but she notices that, hey, Worf, you got to be a parent.
Yeah, she really gets in there. That's actually in this episode that I watched.
Okay.
When Alexander gets on the ship, there's a father-son like field trip with Alexander's class later on, and Troy is asking Worf about it, and Worf's like, I have personnel reports to do. And she really is like, I think it'd be a great idea if you actually went, like you're saying, Steven, like if you actually would invest in being a parent. She kind of pokes at him a little bit for the better,
Sure.
a little intrusive, but for the better.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that in that moment and in many other parenting moments, Worf needed as much push or direction as possible because he really wasn't prepared. He wasn't ready to be that or to do that, to be a parent in any real way. So yeah, I guess I really appreciate this conversation because I've always thought of Worf like Worf's a bad dad, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk through why that might be and to give him a little more grace as a
Right.
parent who never thought he'd be a parent, who suddenly has this son. Like everything about it's complicated. Where the child came from, the relationship with the mother, the relationship with the child, the adoptive parents, like everything about this family is complicated.
Yeah. Uncomfortable, complicated. So how much does forgiveness come into play as far as Alexander is concerned?
Yeah.
And we know he shows up again later in Deep Space Nine. I don't really remember what the result is of that episode. He shows up as sort of this like crappy warrior trying to serve on, I don't remember which ship. So Worf, once again, after not talking to his son for a while, kind of has to contend with him being less than Klingon.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. Not a
Tough.
not a happy component to Worf's story. And there's some good reasons behind that. So we still love you, Worf.
We still love you, Worf, and so does the Dax symbiont. I'm kind of curious of what your thoughts are on this, because I remember
Okay.
when Jadzia died, and then Ezri was coming along. I was like, oh, what is gonna happen here?
I anticipated nothing because as the symbionts are passed on, right, it's a new life. It's a new experience for the symbiont and its new host. So
Yeah.
I didn't expect anything between them. I certainly didn't expect Dax to still be on Deep Space Nine in the form of Ezri Dax,
Mm-hmm.
and that made sense as far as writing and plot and looking at a television show that made sense. But from the standpoint of a Trill, it didn't make any sense to me, and
Yeah.
and I really liked Jadzia Dax as a character, so I really
Yeah.
didn't
Same.
want to like Ezri, but I did eventually like her in her own way. I just didn't. Yeah, the Worf Dax piece, and that when the way you phrase that just now, Stefan, made me think that I've never really considered how the symbiont actually transitions between hosts and then lovers or former lovers, right? So we see at the very beginning of Deep Space Nine when Jadzia sees is it Cole, the
I
Klingon.
I don't remember the
I
name.
think it's Cole, but he, Curzon, my old friend. It's Jadzia now. Jadzia, my old friend. And sort of this. So like the friendship piece seems to be somewhat fluid,
Right. Yeah.
but then
They have rules
romantically,
against aren't
right, right,
there are
romantically,
rules like
it's
you don't
nope,
continue these on.
exactly. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But let's take a step back there.
Yeah.
What did you think about the whole marriage? I mean, Worf and Jadzia as an item, where that came from. Like, what did you think about that?
I think initially I felt like it was forced, but as time went on, Jadzia definitely felt like a good foil for Worf because while yes, she possesses a symbiont that's hundreds of years old, several lifetimes under her belt, she's still got this very playful vibe about her. So she's an absolute like killer scientist, great officer, super fun character, and I think that really poked at Worf in ways that brought him out of his shell and pushed him into development territory we may never have seen without the Jadzia element. So ultimately, I liked their pairing.
Yes.
You?
I struggled with it at first because Worf, he is so militarily Klingon.
Yeah,
So
regimented.
for him to marry a Trill just felt out of character for Worf, based on the Worf, right? But
yeah,
there was some lead up to that with the brief romantic relationship with Counselor Troy on the Enterprise. So there was some nod before this to him being with someone outside of being with another Klingon, and it seemed, and let me just state for the listeners, I loved it, and I enjoyed like the episode where she has to get to know her mother-in-law and her future mother-in-law, and the House of Martok, right? So like Martok's wife, and she has to do all these things to get in the good graces and this and that, and I thought it was wonderful. I think that I think the writers, the actors, I think they did a lot of really great things with this storyline. Looking at it from a standpoint of who Worf has been, it seems strange, but I think like you said, it worked. It worked really well. I think it gave him the opportunity to grow that he wouldn't have had otherwise.
I think I know the answer to this already, Stephen, but had Ezri come on board the station and then Worf and Ezri ended up getting together despite the rules, would you have liked that pairing more? Or would that have also just felt the same kind of this is weird?
That would have been far worse for me because Ezri isn't the strong, confident, experienced
Yeah.
person that Jadzia was. So right, with having the Dax symbiont, she is carrying those things, but Ezri was so meek and hesitant, and which for the character it was lovely to have that kind of character on Deep Space Nine. But if they had gotten together, I it
Do you remember when I was going to say, do you remember when Ezri came on board and she says something to the effect of, at the end of the episode, I don't remember what the scene is exactly, but she basically tells Worf, and Worf, we should probably talk. Do you remember the scene?
vaguely.
I think it's near the end of either the first episode she arrives in or a couple of episodes in. In any case, she just kind of says like, Worf, we need to talk. And then later on, they have this kind of awkward moment where they're on a planet and I think they end up kissing. Am I wrong about that?
Wasn't that when they were captured?
Yeah. It's when they're captured.
I don't.
Well,
the end of Deep Space Nine is not as clear for me as other seasons and other series.
Well, they do have like a couple of awkward moments, and then their relationship just doesn't really go anywhere, which I was fine with because, like you, I would have found that definitely worse than the relationship with Jadzia. Not that I thought the relationship with Jadzia was bad. I would have felt the one with Ezri, if they went down that path, would not be a natural feeling relationship.
Taking this into the future, it actually made sense to me that we don't see Worf again with a romantic partner. I didn't question the absence of a partner. I didn't question the absence of some sort of romantic entanglement in his life. The way the character grew and developed, being, more zen and focusing more inward, I think it actually made a lot of sense to me anyway, that he just was Worf. He on his own doing his thing,
drinking his prune juice.
A warrior's drink. Exactly. I think that
iconic.
Yeah, I guess given that this relationship was such a big part of his time on Deep Space Nine, it didn't even occur to me that he didn't have any kind of romantic interest when we see him in later iterations. And I think that says a lot for how important this relationship was for Worf. and how he
Yeah.
grew in the future. We can only infer, but I'm thinking, he's had this great love and this great loss, and really two losses, right? Kalar and then Jadzia in terms of loss. And yeah, I think it makes sense. I don't know if that's worth noting or not, but it's just
I
something
think
that,
that's its own character development. I think
sure.
that's a really good point, and that really does speak to the importance of those previous relationships. I agree. Well, speaking of the Picard era, there was a little bit kind of backing out of the universe. There was a little bit of controversy over like whether Worf should have white hair or whether he should not have white hair. And we've seen Klingons age at a very different pace from humans, and I remember when it was eventually revealed what the Worf character would look like in Picard, and he was like, white goatee, those white Worf eyebrows, and I didn't really take issue with it. I did think for a second, well, Klingons age so much slower. Why does he look like this? And I think they made some statement in the media, or maybe it was even in the show, where Worf had been through a lot, and maybe his aging sort of caught up, just like the rest of the crew. I mean, the real world reason is, it's an older actor playing this character, and they talked about where it should be, and that's the choice they made. So that's what we get. I didn't really have a problem with it. How did you feel about that, Stephen?
I didn't even
Who cares, right?
I didn't even register it, honestly. I think that with all the characters being older, I mean, look at Picard's supposedly in his 90s now. Patrick Stewart's actually in his 80s. Like Sir Patrick is, they're all older. I think that, especially with the reviving of Data, right? Brent Spiner does not look like he did at the end of Nemesis,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they had to explain that. So I think that as far as appearances go, I was so overjoyed at the revisiting of these characters that level of detail just didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Worf could have had dark hair. Worf could have had white hair. Worf could have been bald. I was just so thrilled to have these characters revisited, especially in the context of the larger Enterprise D, Enterprise E crew. Yeah, it didn't matter to me. I think I remember reading something about how Gates McFadden has aged, and like the character of Crusher just looks so much older. And I thought, yeah, because it's been a couple of decades, and that's just people age, and that's fine. We have Ed Spielers playing Jack Crusher, and he's supposed to be 25 or 26. Ed Spielers is in his mid 30s, right? So I think that if they state what they're supposed to be, right, some level of suspended disbelief. I was really happy with the casting. I was really happy with how the series, the season went, and Worf's hair could not have mattered less to me. The color of his hair just wasn't an issue.
Well, then, on that note, let's talk more about his hair.
Okay.
When I mentioned this episode to my partner Richard the other day, he was like, "Are you going to talk about Worf's hair?" I was like, maybe we should. I do think about Worf's hair sometimes because it has gone through its own eras.
Sure.
Right? I feel like early on in the show, it was sort of matted back on his head, and then he got like the season 5 bob, whatever you want to call it, and then discovered the ponytail, which I think works the best. And then we get the white hair Worf. He definitely has developed as a written character, but also visually has evolved on screen quite a bit. And I'm here for the ponytail. What's your vote?
I would agree. I think the ponytail, I think I like the aesthetic of the ponytail the best, although I do appreciate in Deep Space Nine, and I think we see this at some point in Picard, where his hair is down.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this beautiful mane of hair.
Yeah, it looks
feels
good.
so strange for like Worf, but it's really cool. So I like those moments where you see his hair kind of where he lets his hair down literally. And I think the ponytail is an excellent iconic look for Worf. I would agree.
Yeah, I would say keep that one. Well, we don't have to spend any more time on Worf's aesthetics. I do want to talk for a second about his grandfather in Star Trek VI, the undiscovered country. Do you remember seeing that for the first time?
I do. At this point, TNG's already on air, so I remember thinking, "That's Worf. That's Worf. Why aren't they saying Worf? What's going on? It's Worf."
They say Colonel Worf in the episode. I believe it's the judge that at some point says Colonel Worf.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Worf, which makes it very confusing because it's the same actor. It's a different era. But as I was looking into this, it was the intention that this character, Colonel Worf, was meant to be our Worf's grandfather.
Yeah. That's right. They said his name, but they didn't mention the connection.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it was the intention, like you said, but it wasn't actually stated.
Yeah.
Well, so I think I'm wondering. Okay, so here's this. I mean, he's a lawyer. I mean, is he the equivalent of a
he's
Klingon
like
lawyer?
An advocate. He's the public defender that's hired for Dr. McCoy and Captain Kirk.
Right.
I don't know what his position is, but he is a colonel. I know that.
So he's this, let's say, esteemed role in the Klingon court system. Although I guess if he's assigned to support them, maybe it's not as esteemed. Let's talk through this.
Okay.
Worf's a colonel. Worf's grandfather's a colonel. Then his father Moog is this, disgraced Klingon person, and then we have Worf that we know, like our Worf. I would love to know more about the lineage, like how the grandfather, Colonel Worf, why is that position important? Is it important? Like, who was he within the Klingon Empire? And then, where did Moog stand before the Khitomer massacre? And I would love to know those things as they lead up to our Worf, the grandson, and who he is and how he becomes who he is.
Write the book. Time for you to write the book, Steven. Yeah, I don't
spare time.
in all your tons of spare time, write the book. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I think he's just a public servant that got assigned the case. I mean, the real world answer is probably cross promotion, right? Because as you said, TNG was on the air, so little link there for the fans.
Sure.
Albeit a little confusing, as you said, because we don't really understand how this Worf is connected with the TNG Worf. We know now because of interviews that the intention it was his grandfather. I just like the mirroring of this Worf, and then he has a son, Moog. So Moog is the son of Worf, and then we have our Worf, who is the son of Moog. So it's kind of like we have a son of Moog and the son of Worf, and they're directly related. There are two Worfs. I don't know. It's interesting.
So you okay, listeners, forgive me. So you've got me going in this rabbit hole of names in Star Trek. So thinking about like the Vulcans, right? Vulcan male names typically start with an S and then with a K. So you've got Spock, you've got Sarek, but then like Cybok, right? Like there's this tradition in Vulcan namings of, or maybe it's within a family of the first initial and last initial is the same within the lineage. But then, is there something in Klingon culture of generational name skipping, right? So Worf, son of Moog, Worf was named, I'm assuming, for his grandfather, but I can't think of a single other instance where a Klingon was named for like a grandparent, or like I can't like, and we know a fair number of Klingon names. I don't know how many multi-generational families were introduced to. So maybe it's as simple as that. We just don't know any grandparents and grandchildren other than Worf and Worf.
Right.
But
right.
I'm curious now, is that a naming convention in Klingon culture?
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly don't know the answer to that. Maybe some of our listeners know.
Hit us up on Discord.
Find us on Discord. Anyway, let's come back to our Worf, because something that I thought of with that character is how many times he gets shut down for his ideas when he's on the Enterprise bridge and suggests something. Steven, I don't know if you've seen, people do like YouTube compilations of this where Worf has an idea and Picard's like, nah. Or Riker's like, no, we're going in a different direction. It's kind of depressing to watch these. It's sort of like the Shut Up Wesley thing. I think it happened more than Picard told Wesley to shut up, obviously, but it's
Right.
this sort of like funny interaction that you kind of feel bad for the guy.
I hadn't. I wasn't aware of this, and I haven't seen any
Mm.
of these sort of clips. This makes sense. You're right. Worf is often shut down, and not his ideas are not taken, and that's sad because Worf's pretty cool. Although
Worf's responsible for the security of the ship, so I do feel like he should be taken seriously.
I agree. So I think about the tangent I'm going to go on is with Lower Decks and Shax, and how he constantly wants to blow things up, and he's constantly told, "No, I can't do that." And the
Uh-huh.
sheer joy that is brought the one time they let him eject the
Yeah.
warp core and blow it up, and
Yeah.
but it's similar. Chief of security, and he's
Yeah.
just not allowed to do anything,
Yeah.
even though he's the chief of security.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings me to Star Trek Insurrection. Do you remember when they're on the planet where the Baku are and they're fighting with those flying drones
Yeah.
and everyone's feeling younger? And previous to that, Worf was talking about feeling extra aggressive. And in this scene, he like smashes one of the drones or something. And he's like, definitely feeling aggressive tendencies. And he looks so excited and so happy to just being there and like breaking stuff. And I'm like, get it. I'm so happy for you right now, Worf.
I think many species that we see in Trek have a thing that they're known for that they really enjoy, and to see Worf be able to be happy and aggressive, hey, have at
Yeah.
it, buddy.
I love that you have a hobby. Yeah. Yeah. If it's not those drones on the Baku planet, it's that scary like skeleton guy in his holodeck
Oh, that's right.
program.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know if
a
that character had a
calisthenics
name.
program, right? I don't
Yeah.
know that it did. Skeletor.
Skeletor. There it is. It's a cross
Obviously.
promotion for He-Man.
Sorry, Mattel.
Which that brings me to the scene in one of the episodes where he is in the phaser range, or he's just doing some target practice, right? Guinan walks in, kind of whoops his butt. He's a
She
little bit
destroys
upset.
him.
She's like, "I've been doing this for years longer than you've been born." It's kind of funny to see Worf get frustrated there. Like, I mean, I don't like to see Worf unhappy, but it is kind of this funny moment where the warrior, the chief of security, is kind of just embarrassed by somebody else we didn't expect would be an amazing sharpshooter.
I think that there are several moments where Worf is maybe shown up that are kind of fun because of the
Yeah.
character, because of how he is outside of that. And I think about another episode, or another encounter with Guinan, right? When she introduces him to prune juice. I don't like any of this. Da, 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 da. Try this. I have a hunch. What is
Yeah.
this prune juice? A warrior. He loves the
Yeah.
prune juice. And
Yeah.
then and I believe it's a different episode. And listeners, I apologize, I don't know the name, but the episode where Guinan's trying to get him to like find someone to have some fun with, and he says, I would require a Klingon female for that. And he's like, there's some women on the ship that would find you docile, right? Or something to that
Oh yeah,
effect.
yeah.
He's but Guinan kind of puts him in his place again there. Like, and I don't know, it's
Yeah.
I love Guinan in general, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate her interactions with Worf.
Yeah. Yeah, Guinan's a great character, and maybe we deep dive her at some other point because she really has the ability to take down every character in
Yes.
conversation, every character, including Picard. Such a great character.
She's a force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah.
So we want to leave folks today with just some general trivia about Worf, things that we found interesting. The reality is, as Stefan and I did our research, there is so much information about Worf. So we tried to pick things that we thought were interesting and that we thought you would find interesting. Let's dive in. Worf as a character was conceived by Gene Roddenberry and Bob Justman, who wanted a Klingon on the Enterprise D bridge as a reminder to the audience that today's enemies can become tomorrow's friends. And our information here is from a mixture of the Star Trek Encyclopedia, Volume 2 by Michael and Denise Okuda, Memory Alpha, and we'll kind of pop in where that's from. So this one was from the Star Trek Encyclopedia.
And Michael Dorn recalled his audition as follows: I did not wear makeup, but I took on the Psychological guise of a Klingon. I walked into Paramount in character. No jokes. No laughing with the other actors. I sat by myself, waiting for my interview. When my turn came, I walked in, didn't smile, did the reading, thanked them, and walked right out. This comes from the Star Trek The Next Generation Companion, 2nd edition, page 20.
Following the destruction of the Enterprise D, Worf returned to study for a year at the monastery on Boreth before accepting his assignment on Deep Space Nine. This is from the Star Trek Encyclopedia, Volume 2.
Due to his appearances as a regular in 11 seasons, 7 in TNG and 4 in Deep Space Nine, and half a season of Picard, the character Worf holds the record for most appearances in Star Trek. That's from Memory Alpha.
Worf's ridge patterns evolved due to experimentation by the great Michael Westmore, mainly for aesthetics, but also to be more comfortable for the actor. While the prosthetics initially took 2.5 hours to apply each time, by the end of TNG, the process was shortened to about 2 hours. This is from Star Trek The Next Generation Companion, 2nd edition, pages 21 and 66.
And Worf is notable for being the character with the most revivals in the franchise. He was killed 3 times in the episodes Hide and Q, Transfigurations, and Ethics, each time recovering. However, Catherine Janeway has the record for the most deaths at 9. And this comes from Memory Alpha.
All the revivals, it's great. Worf appeared in the series finales All Good Things and What You Leave Behind, and is one of 4 characters, including Miles O'Brien, William T. Riker, and Deanna Troi, to do the same, from Memory Alpha.
In addition to his film and television appearances, Worf appeared prominently in the game Star Trek Armada. Michael Dorn also portrayed Worf in the series finale of the television series Webster, titled Web Trek, in 1989 during the 2nd season of The Next Generation. That's found on Memory Alpha.
In the Star Trek Picard novel, The Last Best Hope, Worf is revealed to have replaced Picard as the captain of the Enterprise E, following Picard's becoming an admiral to aid in the Romulan evacuation in advance of their sun going supernova. Though there is a token objection due to his reprimand for actions in prioritizing the life of Jadzia Dax over his mission on Sukara, he is accepted for the role, in part because Starfleet believes it will foster good relations with the Klingon Empire. Worf's captaincy would later be confirmed as canon in the episode Surrender. That's from Memory Alpha.
And although Worf was originally intended to be little more than a costumed extra with elaborate makeup, he has since grown into one of the most complex and interesting Star Trek characters. This is from Star Trek The Encyclopedia, Volume 2 by Michael and Denise Okuda.
I love that as sort of a final fact for Worf, that he was supposed to just be an extra. Someone there that they put a little more effort into with makeup. And he ends up becoming one of the most... Well, he becomes the most portrayed character on all of Star Trek, and someone who's really beloved and has such growth.
Yeah.
And, wow.
Yeah.
From a you're over here to we love you, Worf.
Yeah, you're a costumed background extra that has such a legacy now. It's a really cool final fact that Worf grew well beyond his original programming, as Data would say.
Incoming transmission.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Christos, Kelvin, and Kristen. Whether you've got Xbox or Nintendo, check out Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey and Mitch, self-proclaimed gamers who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. Grab your popcorn as you listen to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark and Matt. Don your apron for The Food Replicator, where Matthew eats and drinks his way through Star Trek Cocktail and 3 cookbooks. Beam Aboard Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Steven. In order to not repeat it, listen to History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Curl up with a good book and delve into Beta Canon with Peter, host of the Trek Book Club on Twitter and Bluesky, and his companion Trek Book Club podcast. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey and MC. If you're a member of Starfleet Federation or Planetary Union, go check out Union Federation, covering current Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Head over to YouTube and watch The View Screen live on Sundays, your Trek-inspired talk show hosted by Calvin and Amy, with new 8-week seasons in the spring and fall. Spill the tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the T-Bev. And for our patron members, we have the Hive Mind with script readings and roundtable discussion. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics, and Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek. You can keep up with all of these shows by following the network at BQN Podcasts on Instagram and Bluesky. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode, and hope you'll join us in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, BQN Podcasts on Bluesky, or our Discord server to continue our discussion there. Links can be found in the show notes.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Here on BQN Podcasts, you will never hear a commercial on one of our shows. And if you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week commercial-free, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can join our Let's Fly reaction show, script readings, and other perks. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
If becoming a patron isn't your thing, you can still support the show by sharing our posts on social media, talking about it with your friends, or hitting the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leaving us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show.
At this time, we would like to thank our very own associate producers, Jim McMahon and Davey Willett, and a special thanks to Mark White for our show artwork. We are so grateful for your support. And to all of our listeners, we send out a heartfelt thanks.
Thank you for beaming aboard the Galaxy class, and until next time, make now always the most precious time.
And if we're going to be damned, let's be damned for what we really are.
Engage.
Hailing frequencies closed.